This story starts on a cold and misty evening when three travelers rode up this winding road seeking refuge for the night. Through the eerie mist, an equally eerie shape began to emerge. An awesome castle reaching out from the forbidding forest above them. Once safe within the imposing, ominous walls, they sat in the darkness, concocting tall stories to amuse themselves. One of the travelers was a young woman, and when it was her turn to tell a yarn, she spooked her friends by drawing on what she knew of the strange gray castle. She told a gory tale about a mad scientist who, while trying to create life, created a monster. The story terrified the small audience that night and has gripped the imagination and the nightmares of the world ever since. The woman was Mary Shelley, and the castle where she told the story is here, Castle Frankenstein. What's amazing about her story is that there really was a scientist here, and he really was killed by his own bizarre experiments. But that's where fact and fiction part company, for a very good reason. The villages around Darmstadt, Germany, have always been rich in legend. In this church is the ancient tomb of a brave knight who saved the village by slaying a huge and terrible dragon. His name, Sir George Frankenstein. And the church is in the grounds of Berg Frankenstein, the castle built by the Frankenstein family. In the 17th century, they'd moved to the city. Living there now was a young scientist called Conrad Johannes Dippel. The villagers were wary of Dippel due to his striking resemblance to the young Conrad Johannes Frankenstein, who'd mysteriously vanished some years before, and also because of his bizarre work. Far from prying eyes, Dippel conducted strange experiments, beginning with explosives. He's credited with inventing nitroglycerin. This ruined tower is proof his mixture worked. He blew it up. It was here in this tower that Dippel's real work was done, the quest for everlasting life. Just like Shelley's fictional Dr. Frankenstein, Dippel's search for life began with the dead. But with no poorhouses or paupers' graves nearby, Dippel had to look elsewhere for his lifeless subjects. The only corpses around were here in the Frankenstein family graveyard. Centuries of dead Frankensteins, all lying in grand tombs in various stages of decay. All too much for Dippel to resist. So he systematically dug them up, dragging them from the church through a hidden gate, up this secret pathway leading to the castle, where he would hide them away ready for his dark experiments. But when Frankenstein bodies started running short, the locals grew suspicious of Dippel's newfound interest in their graveyard, and he was forced to take another direction. So up here, in the remote attic of his castle, he began testing his life-prolonging concoctions by drinking them himself. Unfortunately for Dippel, his elixir of life turned out to be prussic acid, a deadly compound that has exactly the opposite effect its inventor had hoped for. When a terrible smell permeated the valley below, the villagers broke into the castle. They discovered Dippel's decomposing corpse on the floor of this room, his body frozen in the agony of his death throes, and his skin turned a horrific shade of blue. In his pursuit of eternal life, Dippel had created Prussian blue dye, a product of the acid, and in drinking it, died. Visitors sometimes wonder why Shelley chose to name her inventor Frankenstein after the former inhabitants, instead of sticking to the facts. But there's not really much of a mystery. Can you imagine being terrified by Dippel's monster? Would you believe it?